Graduating classes of the year 2014 of the Schools of Dentistry and Pharmacy, I am absolutely honored and humbled to be able to speak to you today at your baccalaureate. I'm extremely humbled because I come from humble beginnings, but I'm extremely grateful to you and this community for this opportunity to one last time for some of you to be able to speak to you and send you off with the encouragement that Scripture brings us. It was about 20 years ago this spring that, exactly 20 years ago this past spring, that I received my very first invitation to go speak someplace else than my church. And I was super excited, but I was also extremely nervous because I was extremely bad at public speaking. I was extremely nervous, and I was like, what do I do? What do I do? I was actually invited to come back to my alma mater to speak for something actually very important. It was for their academy days. And this is important because you do bad and you might lose students, right? And so I was honored to be able to be invited to come speak for their academy days, but I was also scared to death. Things could happen. And so I went to my best friend and I was like, man, what do I do? Because normally I'm fairly creative, but when I get extremely nervous, I just clam up. And back then I would get so nervous. And so I said, what do I do? What should I talk about? What should I do? I want to do something memorable, but I have no idea what I should do. And my friend says, I know what you should do. I know exactly what you should do. And he told me, and I heard it, and I was like, I don't know. I don't know. That could really fly or that could really flop, you know, and I could be responsible for a closing of an Adventist college. That would be really, really bad. He says, do it, man, just do it. I'll help you. And so the evening came, and it was time. It was this big showcase where all the departments of the school showcased their talent and what they had to offer. And at the very beginning, they started with a devotional. And so I got up there, and we had decided to talk about the very issue I want to talk to you about today. How do you live on purpose? How do you find your life calling? You found your occupation, that's awesome. But how do you find your vocation? That thing God made you to be and the things that God made you to do, how do you find that? And so I began my shtick up there explaining to them that I just graduated, not 10 months earlier, and I was excited to see them and be with them, but I was working as a pastor just down the highway. And God had made it clear to me that I was supposed to be a pastor. And I fought it a little bit, but what if I wouldn't have become a pastor? What if I wouldn't have followed that calling? What if I would have become, let's say, a math teacher? What would that be like? And when I said, what would that be like, these assistants from the side of the stage wheeled out this chalkboard and a couple of little desks and a little apple on top of the desk, and I started role-playing as if an evangelist was teaching math. And so I went into my shtick. Dearly beloved students, imagine with me, if you will, a farmer. Yes, this dear beloved farmer had 2 chickens. And I started drawing on the chalkboard, and if these 2 chickens, they had them 2 eggs, how many chickens would they have? And I know many of you think that this is a trick question because many of you have fallen to the heresy of 2 + 2 = 3. But I am here today to tell you, students, that this is heresy. And I went on and on and on. And finally I said, do I have a witness? Do I have a witness? And one young man at the very front raised his hand and waved it wildly. And I was happy because that was my friend who told me what to do. And we had mapped this out. We planned it out. I said, yes, son. Yes, dearly beloved son, come up in front of class and give us a testimony. Testify on behalf of the 2 + 2 = 4 truth of mathematics. And so he came up and he gave his testimony. He says, I have to tell you, this last week, you know, when I was gone for a day, I missed a day of class. And I said, yes, I recall that, son. Go on. Take courage. He said, well, I'd gone down for breakfast to Denny's, and I got some scrambled eggs because those were $2, and I got some hash browns because those were $2, and I thought it was okay because I had $3. And then he breaks down crying, and I put my arm around him. I said, it's okay. It's okay. Take your time. And then he belts out. Later that day, when they took me to jail, I realized that what you had been teaching in class was the truth. And I never should have believed the heresy of 2 + 2 = 3. You were right. About that time, a middle-aged man, about halfway back in the crowd, shouted up at me. And he shouted, he says, "What's the point?" I had a heckler. And I said, excuse me? And he said, "What's the point?" And he gets up and he starts making his way across the legs of the students as he's making his way to the center aisle. And I'm like, I'm sorry, excuse me? And he says, "I've had enough. If this is what you guys are all about here, I've had enough." And he walks out the back door in a huff. My very first time speaking publicly. And I had a guy yell at me and walk out. As you can imagine, you could have heard a pin drop. Deathly quiet in that auditorium. My friend sat down and I nervously fumbled with the mic stand and tried to speak and stopped and cleared my throat and breathlessly tried to go into the next part of my devotional. I said, well, I'm sorry if I offended anybody. I was just trying to find a way to help you remember that, God has a purpose for your life. He has a calling specific to you, and you can try all the things you want to, but you just won't fit. And so I'm sorry if I offended anybody. And they were quiet. Every eye was watching me, and some were looking down because they were embarrassed for me. And I stumbled through it, and I said, but in a weird way, this is kind of a good example of real life. Even though you accept your calling and you step into your calling and you do your best, you're going to make mistakes, and people are going to misunderstand you. And it's unfortunate, but it's going to happen. It doesn't mean that's not your life calling. It just means that you're just different from them, and they just don't get it. And I went on to share with them some Bible texts about their calling, just real briefly. And then I said I'd like to thank my friend John for helping out with his testimony up here, for helping out. And I'd like to thank my friend Arden in the back. And a man comes running from the back door down the aisle, smiling ear to ear, the very same man that had got up heckling me before. And he runs up to the microphone and he says, "Gotcha." And about that time, the whole auditorium erupted. What? They had all been set up. That guy wasn't mad at me at all. I had told him to be mad at me because I wanted them to remember my point. I wanted them to listen to me. In the front, I'll never forget, there was these 2 girls on the very front row, and all the noise that's going on, all the explosive noise going on, I could still hear over all the roar, I could hear these 2 girls, "Oh, no, he didn't. Oh, no, he didn't." Students, your calling, I want to talk to you about the same thing. And I want it to be memorable for you too. I definitely don't want to cause less students to come here. But I want you to understand in the same way that I've discovered my calling, that my calling is to take the old and make it fresh. My calling is to take the old story and to give you a picture of that story way you've never had it. You too have a calling. Every single person in this place has a calling. And so I not only want to talk to you, I want to talk to everyone else here as well, because we could miss it. We could miss it so quickly because right now you've got a lot of dreams, you got a lot of plans, you got a lot of student loans. And all of that can distract you from the most important thing that your life was made to do. Today you graduate from this, but you have not graduated from life. And today I want to talk to you about that. And today I want you to open up a story for you that maybe you've heard before, but I need you to open it up again, and I need you to hear it in a way that maybe you haven't heard it before. It's found in Mark chapter 9, and we're going to run through verses 1 through 8. And it says this, "And he," Jesus said to them, "Truly I tell you, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see that the kingdom of God has come with power." And then verse 2, it says, "After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John with him, and they were led up a high mountain where they were all alone. There he was transfigured before them. His clothes became dazzling white, whiter than anyone in the world could bleach them. And there appeared before them Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah." He did not know what to say. They were so frightened. Then a cloud appeared and covered them, and a voice came from the cloud, "This is my son, whom I love. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they no longer saw anyone with them except Jesus. Now, I want you to understand, this story that we've kind of stumbled into is not a success story. It's not some completion of something great. It's a story where the disciples still are learning. They're still students. They have not mastered anything yet. They have not mastered their faith. They're not graduating with their doctorates. They're still students. They have a lot of questions. They don't know what to prescribe, and getting answers from Jesus is kind of like pulling teeth. And sorry, I did that one for me. The rest of them are for you. They had not yet mastered anything. And so Jesus tells them, some of you are going to get to see the kingdom come with power. Now, I know a lot of people have challenges with this text because you say, well, the apostles, they all died and the kingdom didn't come, but that's just the people that only read one verse and make theology out of it. That's verse 1. Verse 2 says 6 days later, he showed some of them the kingdom come with power. And I want to talk to you today about some of you, because some of you will see that kingdom come with power. Not all of you. All of you have passed all of your tests, but some of you will not pass all of the tests. All of the tests coming before you, because there is still a test of faith from this day forth that you need to master. Now, my degree is kind of a funny one. It's a humanly impossible degree. I have a master's of divinity. I have mastered divinity. I haven't mastered divinity. I can't master divinity. Neither can you. I haven't even mastered my faith. I'm still working on my faith. I don't know about you. But I'm still working on that too, and so were the disciples. And so Jesus says, some of you will see that the kingdom will come with power. Some of you. And then, right after he says that, then he selects 3 from the 12. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, the 3 from the 12. Because many of you crave, you desire to be part of the 12. It's natural. We all want to be part of the 12, but you can't, because God has called you 3 out of the 12. You were called out for a specific purpose, to see the power of God. You're craving to be with the 12, but you're called to be with the 3. Jesus goes on to say, I need you to follow me. And I love this. I love the fact that he calls them out and he says, I need you to follow me, because quite frankly, I hate being called out. I love doing stuff with people, just like you, and especially if you're part of the millennial generation of the graduates. Your number one felt need is belonging. You love belonging with the group, but he's called you out. I hate being called out. It seems like it goes in spurts where no matter where I go, I'm the guy they pull up on stage. And despite the fact that I'm preaching to you today, I would rather be listening to a really good sermon than preaching a fair one. But it seems like there, in spurts, I'll be called up. I was at Disneyland in the Golden Horseshoe, minding my own business, not even making eye contact. And next thing I know, someone has their hand on my shoulder. Okay, you're coming with us up to the stage. And I'm up there doing everything that they're telling me to do, trying to pretend like I like it. Next thing I know, we're at Universal Studios at the sound and special effects stage. And okay, hey, you come with us right over this way. I'm like, no. Pick anybody else. They actually enjoy it. And I'm up there doing everything that they're telling me, screaming when I'm supposed to scream. And then I'm at the Polynesian Cultural Center, and I'm not even looking. I'm slouching in the stands. I've got the hat down. I'm not making eye contact. The guy just 2 people next to me is jumping, waving his hands like they're giving away a free iPad. And I'm sitting there minding my own business with yes, the guy with the brown hat, come on up. We're going to play drums. I hate being called apart. But the fact is, whether you like it or not, God has called you apart. He is pulling you apart. You are the 3 being pulled apart from the 12 because he has a journey for you, something he needs to show you, something that you can't see as long as you stay in the valley. He needs to take you to the mountain because in the valley is not where you see the power. You see the power on the mountain. Scripture tells us that he took them to a high mountain. Most theologians believe it's Mount Hermon, which is a mountain that is quite tall, 9,232 feet high. At that elevation, most of the year, snow covers the tops of that mountain. Jesus says, I'm going to take you from here, and in order for you to understand me, I'm going to take you here. But because of the change in elevation, you're going to go through every season that is imaginable. How do you pack? Right now, you feel called. You felt it kind of in like daydreams that, yes, I'm called for something. There's even places that you're passionate about. You just didn't even know why you're passionate about it. God has called you there, but you don't even know how to pack. You don't know what to take and what should I prepare today because I feel my tomorrow, but I just don't know what to pack. I'm a really bad packer. I always overpack or I underpack. I pack flannel and ties when I go to Hawaii. That's how bad I am. I underpack when I go to places, and I'm like, I don't even have anything that matches anymore. What do you do? Where God is taking you, you will not even know how to pack. But that's okay, because he also said that I will lead you. He's not pushing you, saying, go up the mountain, see what you can do, show me what you got. I'm going to follow you, I'll be keeping an eye on you. Go up the mountain, I need you to go from the valley up to the mountain. No, he says, I will guide you every step of the way. And he led the 3 up the mountain, step by step. For me, that's a great blessing because if it's up to me, I wouldn't know how fast to go. Am I going too slow? God, why don't you just transport me from the bottom to the top, wherever I'm supposed to be? Just show me your glory. Just show me who you are. And God says no, because if you ascend too quickly, your body will not be able to adjust to the climate around you, because where you're going will be a different climate from where you currently are. He led them to the top, and Scripture tells us that the 3, Peter, James, and John, as they see Jesus, the Jesus that they knew in the valley, he changes. The same Jesus that they ate with and they slept next to and they walked with and that they had followed, that they had seen him do all these other things, that he did something that they did not recognize. He changed. He transfigured. Light emitting through the pores of his skin and the fibers of his fabric even changing until it was white, a white whiter than anything they could describe. The writers of the gospel have a very difficult challenge expressing what this whiteness is. They're on a snow-covered mountain, and it's whiter than that. And they see this happen, and as this happens, they also see Moses appear, and Elijah appear, and a celestial conversation happens with spiritual beings there. They see Moses, the one who represented all that God was to the children of Israel. And they see Elijah, the one who was all that God would be in the future as the prophet foretelling the Messiah. And they see Jesus standing there. They see Moses, the eternal yesterday. They see Elijah, the eternal tomorrow, and Jesus, the eternal now. A very special conversation, a place that they were invited to see this conversation, but literally they had no part of that conversation. This was a celestial conversation. And Peter speaks up. He does something your mama taught you never to do. Because in these types of conversations with grown-ups, like mama always said, it's better to be seen and not heard. But Peter speaks up and he says, hey, I got an idea. Why don't we build something? Some translations say tabernacles. Why don't we build the same thing that we had for you down there, Jesus, only let's build it up here. And Jesus says, what? The same thing won't work when you get here. When you get to your mountaintop experience, the same things that you used to build right now will not work. And at that time, the cloud comes down. God the Father himself comes down and covers everything, as if he's saying, hey, let me just give you some privacy here, because that's kind of humiliating what you just said. You know, you're giving God projects. You're not supposed to give God a vision. God is supposed to give you a vision. You are not supposed to tell him how to fulfill your needs. You were made to fulfill his needs. Shh. Listen. And God says, this is my son. I love him. Listen to him. By the time you get to your mountaintop experience where God is leading you, you don't have to have the answers. That's the greatest promise I can give you today. You don't need to know what you need to know when you get to where you're going. All you need to know is that God is leading you there, and he's got all the answers for you. And I'm out of time, so I'm just going to finish by telling you what happens next. That cloud lifts up. And as that cloud lifts up and uncovers the scene, the only thing the three could see was Jesus. And I want to tell you, on this journey, class of 2014, where you're going, it will be tough, it will be rough, making it up the mountain, through all of the trials and the rough paths and the briars and the scraped knees and the narrow cliffs. But by the time you make it to the top, you don't have to worry about anything. God says, just listen, and the cloud will rise. And if you want to find your life purpose, all you need to see is Jesus. Thank you.